What's up, y'all? Welcome in. I'm here in hurricane-centric Florida. It's very windy. I don't know if you can hear it. I apologize if you can. Got a great episode of the Ebb and Flow podcast for y'all today. It's with my brother, Jared Picard. You've heard Jared on my podcast before. He is the founder of Be Here Farm and Nature, some of my favorite products on the planet, world-class quality in everything he does. Highly recommend it. Next year, doing 2 epic retreats with Jared, one in Italy, one on the Snake River on the Idaho-Oregon border. Definitely hear more about that. There will be links in the show notes for both of those experiences. You can DM Jared, message Jared, have a conversation with him, talk to him about it, get more info, purchase your tickets, register there. This is a great one, talking about the miracle of life, nature connection, how important that is for our well-being. Excited to share this with you guys. Enjoy it. Lots of love to y'all. You know the products that I like: strong coffee, best way to start your day, raw optics. I'm traveling with my blue light blocking glasses. They're fantastic. Don't leave home without them. A lot of good benefits there. Check the show notes for all of those things. Your code to get a discount. Lots of love, y'all. I'll see y'all soon. Peace.
You have unlocked the eternal link to internal source, the key of imagination, your admission. Access to the enlightened dimension. A gateway at the junction of darkness and light. The place at which the chaos of our conditioned frame of mind give way to a life in constant flux, only to be mastered through vigilant discipline. Peaceful times may come, testing times may go. This is the Ebb and Flow.
Well, here we are, everybody. My brother from another mother, soul brother, Jared Picard, in the house. Good to see you, man.
Hey.
Great to have you back.
Yeah.
So, first of all, since we have you here, Be Here Farm, the Be Here melange of products. I have to say that I have never come across a company that pays such deep attention to the ingredients that are being used in each one of the products, the quality of each one of those ingredients that's being used in the products. And what occurs is you're left with one of the highest quality, highest potency, delicious end results that you could possibly imagine. The summer solstice serum, I don't put anything on my skin, dude. I don't put anything on my skin other than summer solstice serum. It's about as good as it gets. And what better way to talk about that than to have you in the house? Because this is, knowing you and who you are as a human being and what you're interested in doing in the world. Of course, you would found and create this company, UNV. And it's just, I don't even know what to say. It's really, it's almost in this day and age of hyper-industrialization of everything. Even, you go to Whole Foods and you find a product that you like that's a packaged good, say. Maybe it's good kids granola bars that have really clean ingredients.
Right.
And then one day you come back and the ingredients are totally changed.
Yeah.
They've added synthetics and seed oils and all kinds of weird natural flavorings and shit, and they just ruin the product.
Yeah, that really does happen. You're right.
It happens. It's happened to me a handful of times. And so in a world where people, companies in particular, are so hyper-focused on their margins and their profitability, to watch you and to see your company maintain such conscious, purposeful values is really a special thing.
Thank you for sharing.
I mean, other than you being an awesome dude and us having a lot of laughs, I mean, it's amazing to see what you've created with your company, dude.
Yeah, I think the products are like a reflection of the process. So obviously in a highly industrialized process, you're not just getting the lower quality ingredients, you're getting, the shortest cut of every possible aspect of it. And if you break down what's behind a product, obviously you got to start with the ingredients, how and where they're grown. A lot of them are lab derived. They're not even like really things you would consider to be grown somewhere. They're more like made and synthesized and extracted through solvents and other processes. So even if you just look at products that are featuring actual nameable ingredients that you are familiar with, you then still have to wonder, how are they grown? And most products aren't carrying the certified organic label. I'll just say neither do ours, but that for different reasons probably than most. But even if they were carrying the organic label, you'd have to assume that they were industrially farmed through large monoculture organic farms. And so you're again missing, some of the cleanliness and nutrient density that you can get from a more holistic growing process. So every step of the way, from like growing to then how do you take those ingredients and infuse them into, in our case, oil. We use the sun and the moonshine. The most common way is like a stove.
Not moonshine, the actual moon shine.
Yeah, the moon shining. Yeah, moonlight and sunlight.
I love that, dude.
Yeah. So, I mean, every step of the way down into the bottle that it's bottled in, biophotonic Muron glass, to protect the vitality of it. So once you have a product like that, you want to preserve it the best way possible. So we don't add any preservatives to the product. It's just the actual whole foods themselves without any stabilizers, modifiers, preservatives of any kind. And then, what's it packaged in? In our case, the answer will be nothing, because packaging is excessively wasteful and you're going to open it up and throw it out immediately. So we don't have any packaging. We hand wrap the bottles in cloth and we ship them, in wood shavings. So everything that you're receiving is entirely usable or compostable. Even the tape itself that people, wrap the packages up in, they have tape that looks like paper tape, which is ours. Ours is paper tape. But on the bottom layer of that, it'll be just plastic tape. It's like paper tape covering plastic tape. And so that's not really very compostable either. So there's decisions to be made every step of the way, from growing to selling the product. And we try to make each of those decisions, right.
Yeah, you do. I love that, dude. I love it so much. To me, the idea of infusing this oil with the herbs that you use, there's 7 cure-alls, correct?
In the Summer Solstice Serum, yeah. And some of those are repeated in some of our other products. And then some of our other products have a few ingredients that aren't in the Summer Solstice Serum. But the Summer Solstice Serum is a blend of 7 of these botanical infusions that we described.
In olive oil?
Yeah, biodynamic olive oil for the Summer Solstice Serum. And then, we use some avocado oil that we get from Apricot Lane Farm, which is the one that they made the documentary about, the Little Big Farm. I probably shouldn't have said that, because now it'll be impossible to buy it again. But and then we get some almond oil as well, which is from a biodynamic farmer in California who, it's not really commercially viable for her to make the oil. She does have a really beautiful almond farm. It's a very biodiverse farm. It's not like she's only growing almonds, because it's a biodynamic farm, and biodiversity is one of the main tenets of biodynamics. So she'll have a huge amount of different things that she's growing. But anyways, the point is that she custom crushes the almond oil for us on demand. So these oils are much fresher than people probably don't appreciate that when a skincare company wants to make a product, they almost certainly don't have a relationship with a small farm that's growing their oils for them. They're buying them from one of just a handful of like large wholesalers. And, you know, I won't disparage any because they do serve a nice purpose, you know, for people to get access to these ingredients in a convenient way. But those are not of the same quality or freshness as if somebody was growing them in, you know, their holistic garden out back and then harvesting it and turning it into products immediately. It might actually be like a year or two less fresh. By the time you clear cut a field of chamomile in Bulgaria with a tractor and then dry it in an industrial, you know, dryer, and then vacuum seal it into bricks, which like sit on a warehouse shelf until that third party wholesaler that we're all might be familiar with if we buy herbs online purchases it, sends it to their warehouse before a cosmetic, you know, skincare maker orders it for the very first time and then starts their relationship with the ingredients that become the product. So
that's wild, dude.
Yeah. I mean, like, as opposed to tending the soil for years before that ingredient is even planted and then raising it as a baby all the way up into maturity and then harvesting it by hand, only the most pristine blooms because you're doing it by hand. So you have human discernment as opposed to clear cutting it with a machine. So it's like the ingredient will still be called chamomile, you know, both bottles, mine and theirs, they'll both say chamomile. And they're just horses of different colors. They're just not comparable.
Right.
That was a freshness conversation. It wasn't even a nutrient density conversation. Like, what is the chamomile made out of? What process did the chamomile grow through? You know, was it propped up on chemicals that just blast it into growth, you know? So it's like full of water and chemicals, basically. Or did it like struggle in the soil a little bit and have to work hard and, you know, communicate with its surroundings and use its intelligence to seek the micronutrients that it needs from the soil because it's not being overwhelmed and saturated with chemical fertilizers. It has to start using its brain a little bit and its roots and start looking for what it needs. And so it's much more in tune with its surroundings. And
that's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, it's the difference. Like Steiner likes to talk about how you could walk by like a dull person and they won't even notice you because they're, you know, lost in their dullness, let's say. But, you know, you walk by like a Marine who's got situational awareness of their surroundings at all times. Like that guy's going to notice you. So a plant that is, you know, raised in the environment in which it needs to be aware of its surroundings is a much more attuned plant.
So this is one of the pillars of biodynamic farming.
It's an insight from biodynamics. Yeah. I mean, like,
so you want the plants, you want the trees, whatever you're growing, you want it to struggle.
I mean, like,
maybe not
like,
struggle.
Yeah, of course, there's a point, right? There's a point to which, like, you're now.
But you want it
dying.
You want it to strain to live, essentially.
Think about you going to the gym. You know, you need even the moonlight compared to the sunlight is a stressful light to the plant. So that's like the resistance almost, you know, that you get at the gym. So yeah, there's like, you know, the opposite would be over fertilizing a plant with chemical fertilizers
and then pesticiding it to death.
Of course, because the plant is at that point like absent of
life force.
Yeah, life force and a certain amount of intelligence and you know, ability to utilize the resources around it, because it's basically just like, you know, on an IV of drugs.
Right,
you know?
right.
Like it's just like lying there in a hospital bed.
Such an interesting analogy. Such an interesting analogy, dude.
It's not such a leap because like some of these things are grown even hydroponically.
Literally with an IV.
Yeah, like without soil at all. So they're just grown in a salty medium of some kind. And the nutrients obviously are going in what? The water, right? There is nothing else. So it's just going into the water. Even on large farms, they'll, you know, and there's positive ways to do this too. You can inject compost tea into your irrigation system or something like that. Theoretically, that's not what I'm talking about. But the idea that the thing doesn't have to work or think for where its nutrients are coming, I think obviously makes it a more well-developed, well-rounded version of itself.
Mm. Are there any, maybe you're in too deep to recognize anything in this question or recognize some sort of positive in this question? Is there any good reason for hydroponic growing?
We'd have to talk to hydroponic people. I mean, good reason would be, like, for example, there's a woman that we know, that we met on our river trip together, one of the guests, Andy, who has a lot of involvement in a kids' school program in Miami. And they have a hydroponic tower of some kind in their classroom. And I've only seen, positive benefits from watching them on Instagram,
Sure.
So it's like, there's an example, education, there's no reason for me to step into that classroom and be like, listen, fuckers,
Right.
there's no nutrients in that strawberry. That's not the point. The point is that they're cultivating wonder and and interest, in where their food comes from. And they have a garden outside that's not hydroponic as well. But, the theoretical benefit of something like hydroponics is the idea of feeding a bunch of people in urban environments without, farmland.
Right.
And like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was talking to, gosh, I wish I remember who this guy was. I was talking to this guy whose family was just absolutely huge in like Asian produce, like mostly plants from China, that in Chinatown in New York City, this story was, they just, consume in large volumes. And they were, I think, the trucking company, and they eventually went out of business because there's like endless basements in Chinatown where hydroponic LED lights are grown in like the dingiest of spaces, and they're producing a large amount of produce hydroponically. And
Interesting.
And then like they're not in the soil. They're also not in the sunlight or the moonlight. So now it's saying we know so much about what these plants need that we don't even need to put them in the soil. We could just feed them these nutrients in the water. And they don't even need sunlight or moonlight. They just need these LED lights. And you know what's interesting? We studied it, and they don't actually need that much light because light costs electricity bills, right? So they actually just need light for like a few minutes on and then off. And then a few minutes on and then off. And interestingly, they grow. And so it's like they're just completely manipulated into producing something that looks like an end crop, leafy Asian greens or whatever, as a good example, like cabbage or something maybe.
Sure.
Like it looks like an end crop, but it's quite unnatural. It's not that far from, it is less far, but it's not that far in my mind from like, now they're synthesizing meat indoors,
Right.
So it's just like, these are things that kind of look like the thing, but the point is that our products are made from very common sounding things like calendula and chamomile. The process in which they were grown greatly differentiates them. And that carries through, to the end product. And there's other aspects.
You feel that.
There's other aspects of why you feel it, because they're made by hand too. So there's an energetic quality imprinted into it of the human who made it. That's also true for a machine-made product, a factory-made product. There's an energetic quality of the machinery and that process that's sort of infused or imbued into the end product, and they can have the same ingredients, and you won't have a hard time telling them apart if one was handmade and one was factory made, even if they were the same ingredients, which a factory would probably have a hard time, using so few natural ingredients to make their thing look like, a pie or a cookie or whatever it is they're making. But grandma can take like flour, water, yeast and make bread. And then like you look at Wonder Bread and
15 ingredients.
Yeah. I mean, like, and they're both bread and they both look kind of the same. And that's kind of what we're dealing with most products that you would consider, similar to ours, like face and body products, even shampoo and some makeup and stuff like that. There's very few that are made with, ingredients that you'd want to put in your body.
I mean,
and then like on your body, in your body is a thin line. So, if you get the fact that you don't want to put that stuff in your body, it's not that much of a leap to not want to even put it on your body.
Beauty products in general seems like a complete fucking hellscape of chemicals and, ironically, products to make you look younger that age your skin.
Yeah, it's backwards, but yeah, it's messed up.
Okay, before we close out this part of our convo, talk a little bit about cure-alls. St. John's wort is one in particular that I really love and fascinates me.
Yeah.
And I got to see you pick it wild on the river trip, the Snake River, which we'll get to in a minute. The St. John's wort, named after John the Baptist, I believe, who baptized Jesus and was a wild man, lived in the forest, ate honey and locusts, and was they talk about him being the reincarnation of Ezekiel, I believe. Very interesting character, beheaded by King Noah. Herod. Really interesting character, and this plant is so incredible. St. John's wort in particular. But all of the talk about what is a cure-all? Like what delineates or what are some of the characteristics of a so-called cure-all?
Yeah, I mean, I use the word cure-all to describe some, if not nearly most, of our ingredients. And I think what I mean by that is that they've been used for a myriad of reasons in the folk tradition for as long as, we know of. And oftentimes across cultures. And then as a result of that, they're in the sort of consciousness for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And so they've also been pretty well studied at this point. So now they're the plants that have a large amount of like peer-reviewed studies that have been done on them. You don't have to look very hard to type in peer-reviewed topical benefit of insert whatever you want, calendula, chamomile, whatever, lavender, whatever. And what you'll find is a sort of funny list, because it's like every skin condition. We're talking about topical things at the moment. It's like every skin condition you've ever heard of. Like try to name a skin condition that's not topically benefited from lavender and calendula and chamomile. So that's what I mean by cure-all, is that it would take so long to list the possible benefits of the plant. Right. And it seems so all-encompassing that it actually feels more appropriate to just say, it's a cure-all. We've used it for everything.
Yeah.
Some plants like St. John's wort have they're not just physical in terms of their benefit. So like St. John's wort is used as an antidepressant. The most common natural antidepressant around the world will be an extract of hypericum, which is St. John's wort.
Oh, interesting.
So folk traditions around it would have involved using it to, let's say, ward off evil spirits. Like the sort of prediction of Jesus to come, that's, we're talking now about the winter solstice, the most spiritually, let's say, active and dense time of the year. as opposed to the summer solstice, which is like the most physically alive time of year. Everything is reaching upwards towards the sun. Everything's growing and living. Everything's flowering and seeding and expressing itself physically. But then it disappears, right? Where does it go? It goes inward. And so all of the energy, falls down into the earth. The earth looks sleepier in winter, but it's actually much more awake. It's internalizing. It's the other half of the year, all of that energy goes down, and you see the leaves fall, you see the plants drop, you see the sap, store in the roots. And so that's where all the energy goes. And so St. John's wort comes at the summer solstice, but it's actually kind of a medicine for the winter solstice.
Interesting.
And that's where the conversation starts to veer towards like seasonality and the observational calendar of nature, like as opposed to our actual calendar, which, falls off step with a lot of things and was adjusted for different religious and civic reasons over time. It's no longer super well aligned with the observational calendar, which is I can look outside and see, the sunrise and the moon set, and I can see how many hours of daylight there are. I can get a sense of the sun angle and the temperature. And so there's the solstices, which we just described, and then there's the equinoxes, where there's 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night. Equinox equal night. And so that's the halfway point between these solstices. And then the halfway point between those things, the solstices and the equinoxes, are called the cross quarters. And so the cross quarters in the Celtic calendar were the start of the season. And so we start summer at the summer solstice, which is kind of wild because it's the peak sunlight. Right. Every day after that point, there's a declination heading towards fall and winter. And so it's like arguably the end, but it's undoubtedly the middle.
Right.
And it's not really the beginning. And so May Day is more traditionally celebrated as the start of summer in like ancient festivals in Celtic traditions and Roman traditions. There's a May Day was like the beginning of summer. And then February 2nd, which we quote unquote celebrate as Groundhog's Day, is the start of spring. And in a lot of places, it doesn't even feel like spring yet. And yet there'll be snow that melts in Oregon or somewhere very cold and northern in the north, and the snow will melt and there will be bloomed flowers underneath the snow and grass and other plants. I'm trying to remember these ones in particular that we're actually talking about up in Oregon at my buddy's farm, how they're the first things to bloom, and sometimes they're under the snow, like as the snow is melting. Interesting. And so the earth, knows that it's spring at that time. And a person who's in tune with their surroundings will also get a sense of it. And the calendar will feel really delayed. Anyways, this is a St. John's wort story. So the St. John's wort medicine,
this is good stuff though.
Even though it's growing in the summer, it's really, and it's useful in the summer too. It's really most useful in the winter and the fall when the sun is gone. Because if you like take a step back and just kind of look at the plant and you're wondering what it is, it's a snapshot of a moment in time, which in this case is the summer solstice serum. So it's sitting there, assimilating the moment, the weather conditions, the soil conditions, the light conditions, and it only blooms during a 40-day window on either edge of the summer solstice, like 20 before, 20 after.
That's wild.
Give or take a few extra days, depending on your location too. And so it's very much about the peak, the energetic quality of peak sunlight. And then so when the sun is gone, you can use that medicine
to bring light
into your life. And that's why it's so effective as an antidepressant. Because that's, let's just call it an absence of light.
Love that, dude.
Maybe inner light, but still.
I love that.
Yeah.
So last question, and I know you have many products, and maybe there's one in particular other than the Summer Solstice Serum that you're super excited about right now. Before you answer that question, though, the Summer Solstice Serum, which is your marquee product, right?
There's a story behind that, but I'll give you a yes.
What are some of the uses? What are some uses
of the Summer Solstice Serum?
Summer Solstice Serum?
Yeah, so like when you're selling topical skincare products, it's like regulated differently than supplements and medicines. So like you can't really advertise, let's say, about the health benefits of this product, but what I can share anecdotally is a lot of the different things people let me know that they use it for, even though it's not what we sell it for. And so people have written us using it for nearly every skin condition that you've ever heard of. And then also like first aid issues. So like cuts and scrapes and bug bites and minor burns and stuff like that. And you know, I use it. I put it in my hair this morning.
Oh yeah.
People have, you know, reported using it in intimate ways with self and others.
Wow.
Yeah. People use it for like fungal infections and hormonal acne.
Bug bites.
Totally bug bites. Yeah. I mean, like when we were together down in Mexico, Cal got destroyed. Our friend Cal got just attacked by fire ants of some kind.
It was nuts.
And, you know, his whole body was swelling up, actually. Yeah. So he ended up taking some Benadryl or something like that. But the actual pain sensation of the bug bites went away almost instantly when he put the serum on it. And, you know, all these ingredients, pretty much across the collection, it's not just the Summer Solstice Serum, are... like I said, if you look them up, they have a lot of different benefits. But a common thread between them all is probably that they're beneficial in wound healing and they're probably anti-inflammatory. And so we live in such a pro-inflammatory culture that people are generally inflamed. Yeah. And so I find that nearly everyone has a positive response of starting to apply. You know, we're talking about the Summer Solstice Serum, but it's kind of worth explaining the story real quick because the Summer Solstice Serum is our flagship product because the other ones burned down. You know, so we had some real bad wildfires in 2020, which people who heard our last episode together 2 years ago heard that story, and we grow all the ingredients. So at that point, I wasn't going to just go to the website that I was referring to earlier and buy all of our ingredients from wholesalers. I was going to wait an entire year and restore the farm and slowly grow those ingredients again and make the products again for the next year. The day of those fires, thanks to what in retrospect I'll call a premonition, I spent 5 hours, about 3 hours before the fire broke out, packing up all of the ingredients for the Summer Solstice Serum into our family RV under in real time, fear that we might get evacuated sometime in the next couple of weeks. And our plan was to launch that product on Sun Potion's website, which would have been the first time it was really launched kind of publicly. Prior to that, we had been selling it to our private farm club members and at farmers markets. So this was the first time it was going to go online. And I was thinking in my head, oh my God, we get evacuated every October, at least the 5 prior to that one. So 5 Octobers in a row, we were evacuated. There was never any actual danger, but if you live in an area like this, they'll evacuate you preventatively, and then a couple days later, you go back in.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that you'd been evacuated every year.
Yeah, Kaya was 5 when the fires hit. Every year of her life, we were evacuated.
Wow.
Yeah. So in fear of being evacuated, again, not from actual danger, because the last 5 in a row, nothing had happened. But I just knew I wouldn't be able to get to the property and that we were supposed to deliver 400 Summer Solstice serums to Sun Potion 2 weeks from that date, basically.
Wow.
And they weren't even blended yet because, as we said, we make them in these small glass jars as individual ingredients. So calendula is all by itself. It's not like I blend them all into at the same time. We make them as individual ingredients and then blend them to make the products. So we hadn't even blended it yet because it was September 27th and the season was kind of just coming to an end, and they had really all just been infused. They need to be cold pressed. So we separate the flowers from the oil and then we blend them. But we don't blend the whole year's worth either. We just blend what we need. So I was worried that we wouldn't be able to get those oils if we were evacuated. And so I made the Summer Solstice Serum ingredients mobile and put them in the RV. Had I known an actual fire would come, I probably could have loaded up all of our ingredients and a lot more stuff, because those buildings all burned down, except for our home, which is, a blessing. But the fact that the Summer Solstice Serum is, quote unquote, our marquee signature, flagship, whatever you want to call it, that's because for the entire first year that we launched to the public, thanks to first sunpotion.com, then we were picked up on Cap Beauty, which is like a clean beauty website. And then, we got into a bunch of world-class iconic hotels. We did a handful of podcasts, Paul Check and others. And all of that got us, much more attention than we had ever previously gotten. And all of those people only knew about the Summer Solstice Serum. It's not like I was going to be like, hey, wait till next year. We're going to have this, So it was just...
this is what we got.
It's just what we got, And there's a couple iconic skincare brands who have launched over the last 10 years and done really well on one product. And then 5-10 years later, a second, maybe a third. So we were kind of emboldened by the fact, look, okay, we got this killer product through a miracle. It is with us and did not burn down like everything else. Let's sell it. And so that became our flagship product. 1 year later, and now we're 2 years later, actually 3 years later, we have for the last couple of years now been growing all those ingredients, making the entire collection. Thankfully, none of it is burnt down. And so we have 3 serums. We have the Summer Solstice Serum, the Restorative Body Serum, and the Royacon Serum. They're all slightly different. We have 2 masks, which we co-branded with Sun Potion because we're utilizing some of their awesome ingredients
really nice
in our masks. We got the wet mask and the dry mask. We have our botanical soaking salts, and we have our lip treatment called Honey Kiss, and we have a collection of distilled hydrosols, which are floral mists.
Really nice.
And then we have a couple edible products, which we're not currently making, but I'm saying because, keep your eye out for them, because we are just working on some stuff with our commercial kitchen here now that we've moved to Texas. So those were all permitted and being made in California originally. So there's a couple botanical extracts that are actually edible ingestibles that we sell as well.
Tulsi drops?
Yeah, Tulsi Rose drops is one of them. And
those are out of this world.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Seriously.
Yeah, that's like a drop in the mouth. And it's people use it for grounding and anxiety and digestion. But again, we sell it as a flavorful, delicious drop for your water or otherwise, but most of our clients end up doing a drop in the mouth.
It's also a craving killer.
Yeah, totally, because it's got a natural sweetness in it. So, you got that feeling to go grab a chocolate or a cookie or whatever it is, and you make a quick pit stop at the Tulsi Rose drops, give it a drop in the mouth, see if that's enough, and oftentimes it is.
Yeah, it's a really nice product.
Yeah, so for that reason, I call it a mindfulness tool too. So
love that.
There's a real excellent time you can have by meditating on the one drop. It's just one little drop, and there's so much flavor and experience, and then memory and sensation and feelings that come up if you drop in, no pun intended, if you drop into that drop. So I use it as a mindfulness exercise. Love
that, dude. I was just dropping into it while you were talking. I could feel it on my tongue, actually. It's funny. Amazing, dude.
Yeah.
You can get all this at BeHereFarm.com.
Right.
And use code EbenFlow.
That's right.
Get 15% off.
You bet.
Highly recommend it, guys. Seriously, it's fucking good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, look at your face. It's glowing.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And for, men, you probably had a decent amount of male listeners. These are very unisex products.
Yeah.
Very mildly scented. I also don't use other products, and I haven't washed my face with face wash of any kind in probably 7 or 8 years. Maybe once or twice something specific happened, but this is very cleansing,
Yes.
very detoxifying.
Yes.
So you can interact with us or check out our website, but there's ways of utilizing it as a cleanser as well. So through some self-massage, you can rub the oil in, kind of like people do oil pulling with their teeth. You could rub the oil in and then wipe it off, and you'll see, whether you've got makeup on or just dirt, grime, debris, whatever it is, you can see it all come right off on a towel.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll throw out there, although I haven't done it in a while, aftershave. Great aftershave.
Yeah.
And apparently pre-shave.
Yeah, especially if you add a little bit of shea butter or something, like a little bit of something with it. That's the other thing, is people add the summer solstice serum to their favorite kind of shea or lotion or something just to get it in there. And then, I leave a bottle of it at my barber, because when he shaves my neck, I always get little red irritations. Yeah. And so now he shaves my neck, he puts this on, and
no irritation.
Good
at
to
all.
go.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I think we've beat the products up.
We've beat them up.
Yeah.
All right. Good stuff, guys. Check it out. Use code Eben Flow. Get yourself some nice stuff. I think your lady will love it too. Just FYI.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Summer solstice, winter solstice, spring equinox, fall equinox. This is something that really fascinates me. And honestly, this year was the first time ever. And thanks to you, my friendship with you, our brotherhood, has definitely brought me into greater awareness of this, the Earth's rhythms, the Earth's cycles. And the first summer solstice that I believe I've ever truly celebrated was this year at the trip on the Snake River.
Yeah. For
the Be Here nature trip.
Live in Hell's Canyon.
Be Here live in Hell's Canyon, which was one of the most, it was a medicine journey, truly. And there was no medicine. I mean, we had some bags and a little tobacco, a little bit of cannabis, maybe. That's
remember.
That's neither here nor there. The point is, there were no quote unquote recognized psychedelic substances as far as plants or, biomatter go. And yet that trip was completely transformative.
Yeah. And kind of like interestingly psychedelic in some way.
Absolutely psychedelic.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I'm like, it was a totally psychedelic trip. There was just no ingestion of a fungi or a vine or, there was no psilocybin or DMT or LSD. It was just pure nature.
Yeah. It's also like the absence of modern society.
So it's a big thing. Didn't look at our phones for 4 or 5 days.
Right. And just not having any of that around at all is like a decompression chamber. It's like being in a float tank almost. A float tank can be sort of psychedelic,
Yes.
So it's to take all of that away. It's like we're just in a different environment. It just feels less thick.
Yeah.
It's like you can just move through it so easily.
You're on the river. The river's this incredibly meditative entity that's constantly flowing and moving.
And
There's
the rocks.
wildlife, the rocks, the mountains. You're in this incredible canyon. It's pristine. It's quiet. There's no street lights. There's no
power lines.
There's none of that zzz that's constantly in the atmosphere, especially when you live in LA. None of that. You're just in pure, literal God's country. And I was going to say something. The decompression, the being out in nature, such a powerful, transformative experience. The food was amazing. What was the thing I wanted to say? There was one note that, anyway.
I don't know, maybe I'll spark you with this because the thing that tripped me up the most, like when it really hit home, was when I pulled my tent outside of my cot. And
your cot outside of your tent.
Yeah. Check that, reverse. when I pulled my cot out of my tent and spent the night just out of the tent, and seeing the stars. And for some reason, the stars, I guess because they're, in my mind, even older. But seeing the stars and then realizing that the river, the rocks, the stars, and most likely the plants in general that we were seeing were identical to what the first people ever there saw. The fucking identical.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild.
It's like a time machine.
The stars, it's a complete blanket of stars in the sky. It's spectacular. Like you don't even really understand what that sight is like until you've seen it for yourself.
Yeah, pictures don't do it justice. I guess we should contextualize what we're talking about. So we take Eben, myself, our friend Dopero, who's a sound healer, musician.
Incredible.
And then Chef Aaron, who's a highly trained chef, but also is very much in line with Weston A. Price and holistic principles around digestion and vitality and nature connection and just holistic health in general. And so the four of us take 15 people on, last year it was 3 nights, this year it's 4-night whitewater rafting trip through the place that we're describing now, Hell's Canyon, on the Snake River. And Hell's Canyon, the Snake River, is the dividing line between Oregon and Idaho. And it's North America's deepest river gorge. And it's epic. And
you've been doing it since you were a kid, which I love.
I did it a few times, throughout my life prior. And I just... like there's river guide trips that do this, in the Grand Canyon, even on the river we're on, right? So there's these routines, and I did whatever their regular trip was, and I just remember it being so memorable, so much fun. I did it with my high school buddies at one time.
That's cool.
And so I knew that there was a foundation there of a remember for a lifetime trip. And then I knew if instead of drinking and fishing and, partying and doing whatever me and my high school buddies were doing.
So you had that trip too?
I did, yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, we were 19 or 22 or something.
Yeah,
I don't exactly remember what year it was, but we came with, an army's worth of beer and liquor and then likely other substances. I mean, I was with my friend last night here in LA for dinner. And we were remembering that we were just reminiscing about that trip, the original, the back in the day one. And we were just laughing about our friend who had a few too many, and he was laughing so hard he fell backwards in his chair, and the chair just went, down to the ground. And then he stayed like that for the rest of the night for hours, just communicating, drinking, hanging out, just stayed in that orientation. So yeah, I've had both kinds of trips on this river. But I just knew that if we broke it apart a little bit and just looked at what's there and then tried to make some modifications that were more in line with our values, that there was a really special opportunity there. And so there's not that many tweaks that we had to make because, like you said, you're out there in nature. I mean, this is all exactly what I'm looking for. And then in our case, the menu is completely revamped. We bring in spring water from a creek that we capture ourselves, 100 gallons for all of our water for the whole time. All of the food was sourced from pristine, regenerative farmers, and every piece of meat, every, can of this, every drop of everything was thought about for months ahead of time. And yeah, thankfully, everybody who came has shared similarly that it was one of the best trips of their life. And a handful of them have already signed up for next year. Actually, by the time this episode launches, you guys who are listening can sign up. And there's actually a whole second other trip that we could talk about as well. But the river trip is June 17th We all get to Boise. We have a dinner. Sorry, June 16th. Because then the next day, June 17th, we're on the river for those 4 nights, which makes the last night on the river this year the summer solstice. And then we have one more night in Boise just to get out of there at the end. And so it's about a week, but it's those 4 nights, 5 days on the river that people are really coming for.
Spectacular. I know what I wanted to say. We spend so much time in narrow focus. We talked about this on our last podcast.
Yeah.
We spend so much time in narrow focus, from looking at our phone to the hyper focus on whatever we do for work to make money, paying bills, doing this thing, going there, sending the email, doing all this stuff. We're constantly in like this pinhole view of life. And when you get out there on the river and all of that goes away and your focus opens, that in and of itself is such a healing and powerful experience. Like for me in my meditation practice, I truly do an open focus meditation where I'm just tuning into the sounds coming into my ears. And when you get into that open focus, what happens is the 2 hemispheres of your brain, they start to harmonize and work together. And you're not in this narrow focus is hyper concentration on usually some task that holds a somewhat significant amount of stress in it. There's something to be done, there's something to be achieved, accomplished, etc. But when you get into open focus and you're not working to identify every single thing that you come into, and you just get into the experience of what's happening right here, right now, because that was such a powerful experience for me on the river trip. Was I found my mind kept wanting to go, how do I get more of this in? I need to get more of the experience in, like, and I would just settle into just being in it. And everything would just settle and wash away. All the mind noise,
Yeah, like the difference between what you were talking about, like bringing it in, and what the difference between that and what you're really feeling is an opening of yourself so that you become essentially porous, and your soul expands beyond your physical body and forms a union with your surroundings. And that's why I really believe that nature connection is like the freest and most available and most needed medicine of our time. We're disconnected, in a billion ways that we don't even need to go into. It's obvious. We're so disconnected. So to connect in a meaningful way is actually something that requires your thinking and, activities. Like you can't just take a pill.
Yeah.
You have to decide that you're going to think and act like this. And then when you do, there's an abundance of medicine. And you don't need to go on a high-end retreat in Hell's Canyon to achieve that. The things that you need to do to start feeling that are so simple that your brain might not even hear them as valuable if I were to describe them to you. Like being mindful of the full moon and the new moon and the sunset and the sunrise, being mindful of whether you're approaching an equinox or a solstice. Like people might think, well, I don't really care about that.
Right.
That's not going to do anything for me. And, I'm just sharing from my direct experience how profound those simple relationships turn out to be when you approach them as a part of yourself. Because then you're not disconnected anymore. You're unified with all that is. The entire planet, the calendar is the planet's journey,
right,
around the sun, like over the course of a year.
Was just thinking about that. I was thinking about that the other day. What a fucking miracle it is.
Yeah, think about how hard it is to go fly somewhere, right? This this is a serious trip that the planet makes every single year.
It's like how how is this even happening? It's a mind blower when you really get into The Earth is spinning on its axis, and then it's flying around the sun. Why doesn't the Earth just fucking fly off into the abyss? You know?
Well, I'm sure scientists could probably answer that for us, but like,
yeah,
and
I'm not
also,
interested in
and
that.
also it's not like this, like you've probably seen it on YouTube, but it's not like the sun is sitting there on the chalkboard like they draw it for us in school. You know what I mean? The sun's also
flying,
right?
Yeah.
Everything's flying.
Yeah, dude.
And
it's fucking mind-blowing.
Science has an answer for it without, you know, spirituality or miracles involved, as long as you accept, you know, one tremendously large miracle, which is like that it all came from nothing.
Right.
In the beginning. It was
Right.
like inexplicable.
Yeah. It's mind-blowing, dude.
Yeah.
When you really think about that, we take everything for granted.
Yeah.
We take it so much for granted. And this is really the mission, the ethos of your mission, of what you're doing with Be Here, what you're doing with these events, is to connect people through nature to the miracle of life.
Yeah, and like, you know, the gain is there's a lot of gains from that actually happening, but selfishly, the gain to the individual is that they connect with themselves.
Yes.
Through nature.
Yes.
I mean, it's like you recognize all of a sudden you're a part of that. It is you. You are all one, and then that's a life-changing realization. For me, anyways, it was. You know, I grew up in suburbs and urban environments, and then to
Jersey?
in New York. And so to get out, you know, originally in Georgia and Tennessee, and then California, and now Texas, and to get out and feel, you know, connection to nature, and to through that relationship to find a deeper understanding of my own nature. And then to start living a life that was resonant with my experience of nature, and to have my dream, my own personal and professional, you know, highest goals, have my real dream for my life and for my family be resonant with the healing regenerative impulses of Mother Nature. You know, there's lots of other ways to make money. But to try and do it in a way that is in alignment with let's just call it the healing powers of Mother Nature, is like what Steiner would call right vocation. So it's you know, it's sort of all positive. It's good for you. It's good for the community. It's good for the planet. It's good for the customers. And so, you know, we're kind of also talking about Paul Chek's Dreamline, which has been a hallmark of the last third of my life. And I think honestly saved my life in a lot of ways, as did like having a daughter and a wife.
Yeah.
Because if I was just sort of on my own and I experienced the fires and the perceived loss of what that was, which was we were developing a hotel on that property. And I had dedicated 10 years of my life to it, and I was anticipating dedicating the remaining 60, 70, however many years to it as well. And so the perceived loss of that project was something that, you know, could have made me suicidal.
Sure.
In another dimension.
Yeah.
It was just such a loss. And yet it wasn't my dream to develop the world's best hotel, even though that became the marching orders on the ground.
Right.
You know, my dream was to live in connection with nature and to share that with other people. So thanks to having that dream, I was able to not really fall apart so much when the reality of my life fell apart. So the Dreamline in Paul Chek's teaching is, you know, an image for it is like an archer with a bow and arrow. And now all of a sudden I'm feeling like maybe we did talk about this a couple years ago in the first pod.
Yeah, I think we did.
So just okay. Just briefly for those who haven't heard it. So, you know, the line between you and that bullseye is your Dreamline. And so you want to walk down your Dreamline. You want to get to that bullseye. And so in his system, the way you do that is by defining values for your life in 4 categories: Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, Dr. Movement, and Dr. Happy. And so that's a whole thing you can go learn, read about through Paul, but having values to moment by moment live by as you choose to make dream affirmative decisions in your life is how you walk down your Dreamline. And so I had to quickly realize that just because the hotel wasn't being developed doesn't mean that my life is falling apart. So there's actually been really only beautiful blessings for the most part that have come from that experience. And I sort of look back on it somewhat fondly, actually.
I'm sure it was an incredible. You learn so much. I mean, you spent a decade directing a biodynamic farm, which I'm sure is just like
plus just the land itself. It was a 300-acre property, so the farm was 3 acres. But across those 300-acre properties, I learned a lot about interacting with Mother Nature and trying to sort of impose will on Mother Nature, like building a road across a mountain. That's, first of all, we didn't build the roads. They existed. There were sort of existing logging roads, but they had been built in that way, switchback roads, miles of them, let's say 5 or more miles of dirt roads built by loggers about 85 years prior to us moving there. And so most of those, by the time we got there, were like landslides and just falling off the mountain. And so we put in a lot of time and effort and energy to restore those so that the mountain wouldn't just keep leaching away into the watershed and, making everything less pretty, first of all, but also less healthy for the fish and other things that are living in those creeks. And so we repaired all of those. This is one of the first things we did when we got to the properties, repaired the road network. And then annually, as recently as last week, annually, every single year, parts of that road network just want to fall off the mountain because rainstorms and sleet and hail and fires and, whatnot are pretty formidable forces to try and control. And so one of the, greatest lessons of stewarding a 300-acre property is like, nature is so powerful and you can't, nature's going to win every time.
Yeah.
You got to use a lot of force and ingenuity and
to
technology.
Resist.
Yeah. So, but that same force, it's like when you're acting in resonance and harmony and syncopation with these big energies, it's like riding a big wave, you know what I mean? And so as you tap into the spring cross quarter and May Day and the summer solstice, and, as you start celebrating the equinox and, moving into Day of the Dead and moving into, there's a whole litany of fall festivals and holidays that are not very well known today, but all interesting. Michaelmas is one that we just celebrated a couple weeks ago here. And that's one that people can look up and check out or DM me about to talk about. And, as we are eventually moving towards this highly spiritual time, which the, Christian lore, calls as the coming of Jesus. And, it has always been the winter solstice. And
what day is that? Do you know?
The winter solstice, December 21.
Okay.
20 or 21.
December 21.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Oh, it's my daughter's birthday. What's a really simple way, or what's the best way that someone who is interested in experimenting with, playing with, beginning to tap into this earth cycle, what's one of the ways that you can do that?
So what's
like you said, like celebrate the summer solstice, celebrate this, you know.
Yeah, well, like that's, I mean, like the tone that you just use to say those things sort of, I think, is like the societal tone.
The throwaway.
Yeah,
thing.
it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, you heard how you said it, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
It's like, no, those are that's actually the thing.
Celebrate
like
the summer solstice.
That's the thing. Like, so that's what I would call step 3 of 4 in my process of nature connection. So step 1 would be observation.
Okay.
Go sit outside, observe nature. That could be a really deep practice. I mean, you can go from looking at nature to all the way to what we were just talking about, like becoming porous and your soul expanding and you're unifying with nature and you're having a transformative experience. So observation. Step 2, and they build on each other. They include and transcend each step. So step 2 is observational reverence. So it's like once you're adept at observing your surroundings and giving some attention to what you're observing without, you know, it being a throwaway waste of your time, going through the motions kind of thing, adding the energetic quality of reverence to it is what I would say is the next step. And
what does that feel like?
Reverence, I mean, my favorite picture of it is from Steiner. Reverence is the feeling of going to visit like a holy person that you've been waiting 15 years to meet. And the feeling you have as you're reaching forward towards the door handle to open up their office chamber door for the first time. Like if you could picture yourself doing that to go visit whatever guru or holy person.
Someone who's been massively impactful on your life.
Yeah. Like Jesus is on the other side of that door.
Sure.
You know, you're opening that door. The feeling you would have then, that's how you can to imagine that moment is a cultivation of reverence.
Okay.
So if you're feeling like absence of reverence, you can cultivate reverence through that picture or something that works for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, to feel that feeling rise up in your heart and then to move it to your eyes and let it come out your eyes and reflect back off of what you're observing is observational reference. And the third step would be to utilize this practice of observational reverence through ceremonies and rituals, which is what you're talking about now, celebrating the solstices, etc.
On the river, we made a incredible altar to nature for the solstice. That was logs and rocks and skull. We found some animal skulls and bones and plants and flowers and wildflowers and all sorts of stuff. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It was a great experience as a group to do that.
Yep.
So make an altar, do anything.
Anything, literally anything.
Any ceremonial act.
That is, you know, could be by yourself, certainly, but enhanced if it's social. And with the right feelings of love and brotherhood for your fellow man and all living beings, do something.
Yeah.
You know, on a certain day and time. And it could be literally, you know, kind of like a hangout. You don't have to be so overt about it.
Right.
Like, hey, we're here doing this holy ceremony. It could just be a social gathering, and maybe that's what feels most comfortable for you. But you're
maybe
still
making a toast.
Yeah, you're still doing it, you know? And so you're basically, it's like, you know, on those notes, on those days of the year, it's like a downbeat, you know? And you can either hit the drum or not. And if you hit the drum, you're on beat. And so I try to hit those beats, you know, at a minimum. There's all these other rhythms and holidays and festivals and dates and things that could be meaningful to you when the certain tree blooms, you know, when a certain wildlife flies back into town, you know, when a certain, you know, whatever fruit is available in the forest. You know, if you live in a city, you have to adapt those to, you know, to something that's a little bit different depending on what you have around you. But to observe with reverence and then to celebrate your observations of the seasons, in this case, through ritual and ceremony, that's how you That's how you're now participating with it.
Right.
Okay. You're now participatory. That is why in my own head, I call it nature participation. I call it nature connection out loud because nature participation sounds weird. And people don't know what it means.
Yeah.
But going through this process now, now that we're here, I'd like to say, okay, we're really talking about nature participation.
Yeah.
And so to embody the seasonal changes through ceremony and ritual is nature participation. You're now being the planet. That's what the whole system is doing.
Is this step 4?
Step 3 is like,
is that?
Yeah, you're participating.
You're participating.
Step 4 is sort of the net result.
Oh, okay.
If you're living a life of observational reverence and ceremony and ritual as regularly as possible, you've probably reached step 4, which is co-healing with Mother Earth. So there's so much medicine in Mother Earth. And there's so much medicine that Mother Earth needs from us. And it's a co-creation, and we both need co-healing. And so you're now, having gone through those first 3 steps, keeping in mind that steps 1 and 2 is somewhat of a daily practice, regular practice, and step 3 is a semi-regular practice. So now you're doing this regularly and semi-regularly throughout the year. So now, step 4, you're much more inclined to have dreams that are in line with what's beneficial for Mother Nature and for you in a holistic way. And you're much more likely to make decisions and, build values and raise a family and do certain things that are much more, in the direction of co-healing as opposed to mutual destruction, which is the other extreme.
I love that, dude. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because someone might hear this and go, man, that's another thing on my list. I got to connect with nature, as if it's
totally
some other job to do or chore to do in order to be healthy.
Yeah.
But what we're really talking about is how we're living, being connected to nature, or making a conscious effort. At this point, for me, it's just how I live. I walk around and I observe trees. I do this. I observe the wildlife that's all around me, even here in LA. The hawks, the squirrels, the crows, the lizards, the coyotes. I'm constantly just observing all of this stuff that's happening around me, all of this life that's happening around me. And it creates a much richer life experience. It's much more full. It's much more open. It's much more expanded. There's a lot of medicine that comes through that.
And you're also making it's a two-way street. So, your body is being nourished and fed off of the thoughts that are stimulated by those observations. So if you were observing, shitty TV, and a lot of violence and whatever, or if you're raised in that environment, your actual physical body and your neural pathways and everything that drives how you think, behave, and act is all being informed and built upon that. And so you are what you eat. It's not just food though. It's all these things. It's your friends, it's your culture, it's your society. So this practice is an intentional way, and you're saying you do it as second nature, which I think is what happens.
It's gotten there.
Yeah, but as a practice, it's an intentional way of sort of cultivating your non-food diet, everything else that you're consuming, all the other information, all the things your brain is spending its time thinking about. And then if you're doing it in open focus, like you were saying earlier, there's a huge hormonal response to like open focus is the lion is sitting in the shade looking at the whole herd. Narrow focus is he sees one limping in the back and his eyebrow furrows and his nose reaches in and his adrenaline starts pumping. He's going to go fucking eat that antelope. And he's got to, have a huge burst of energy that's about to come. So as we narrow our focus onto our books and tablets and whatnot, that's straight out of Les Femi, the creator of Open Focus. That's how he describes it. When you narrow in on your phone or your whatever, it's like it thinks you're about to go pounce on that antelope.
Right.
Your whole body's responding to it. So
that's what I meant, where there's an element of stress involved in the narrow focus.
Totally.
Yeah. I love how you said that.
Yeah. So we can you can go out and observe that tree, and then you can cultivate your thinking to further that direction, because your thinking is going to naturally just go in whatever direction, right? But this is one of Steiner's 6 basic exercises, actually, is the control of thinking, and it's the first one. And the way he trains thinking is to take something totally innocuous, like this nail, something that you don't care about at all, and to have a 5-minute exercise where you bring a thought, and you can't do a nail at home. You got to find your own thing. That defeats the purpose. I've already ruined nail for you, so you got to go find your own thing. So you intentionally connect as many logical, factual thoughts in a row just about this. I'm holding this nail, and it's definitely pointy on the top, made of silver, can be used to hammer into things. I'm guessing it was machine fabricated. It's got a soft, it's got a round top. I'm not going to bore people at home by doing this for 5 minutes, but you can.
That's the exercise.
That's the exercise. That's the first of his 6 basic exercises, which are actually sort of the pillars of the Be Here men's group, which is launching in February. And I'm co-hosting that. It's an online virtual men's group. You guys could check that out on BeHereFarm.com as well. And I'm co-hosting that with like a real Rudolf Steiner expert, a mentor of mine, this guy, Dr. Edmund Knighton. And
stoked for that too.
Yeah, so we're sort of infusing some insights from Steiner into our program there. And because control over thinking, I mean, what can I do with that now? It's like, well, now while I'm observing in nature, I can actually be, reaping the actual benefits of it. I can start to think underneath that tree how there's a circular breath going on between me and it, that I'm breathing out what it's breathing in.
Yes.
And we're just sitting there, this circuit, and applying my thinking power and my attention and mindfulness to the tree. It like deepens that practice even further. So it's kind of endless, it's a lifestyle, I would say.
Yeah.
It becomes second nature. I mean, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And so I think what you said is what is natural, would naturally happen to anyone who went down an intentional practice of it. It would become, absolutely almost like, that's why I said it almost sounds too stupid. It's too simple to even talk about. It's like, I had to realize. Because
of our conditioning though.
Yeah. And I had to realize that I'm too close to it. I had to back up and be like, wait, most people might not be thinking like that right now. And so like, let me try to dissect that a little bit. And that's where I came up with like those 4 steps. It's like, what am I actually claiming is happening?
I love that.
When you celebrate, in this case, the summer solstice.
Yeah.
Just going like, celebrate this, celebrate that. You could do that, right? But if you're on that trip practicing observational reverence, ceremony, and ritual for the co-healing of you and your brothers and Mother Earth, it's like, okay, well now we're celebrating.
Yes.
Now it's something different.
Love that, brother. Well, I think it's about time to get you on to the airport.
Yeah.
My dude, thank you.
My man.
Love that. Fucking excellent as always.
Yeah.
I got a lot out of it.
Great to drop in. It's quick, but always good to think about this stuff. I mean, for my own benefit, even it's nice to have to try and communicate about nature connection, which is a buzzword that, you're going to hear Coca-Cola use it next year. It's like, it's going to mean nothing soon. So, to make meaning out of it feels really important to me. Something that I want to share. So hopefully people got something out of it. And
love that, brother.
Yeah, hit me up on Instagram at Be Here Farm. Talk about this more. And Eben is along with me and Dopero, the headliner of not just that river trip, but we're also doing a week-long trip in Italy at an agriturismo in Umbria, which is 7 nights of just what we're calling slow food, slow culture, slow living. It's actually an organization called Slow Food that started in Italy. And so we're going to, you could look that up or reach out to me to talk about that, but we're going to practice some slow living in Umbria, where it comes from. And
wait, what's the date of the Italy trip?
Italy is May 18th, 7 nights, fly into Rome. And then June 16th for that dinner in Boise, followed by the river trip starting the next day.
Love it.
And
big kickoff to the summer.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a good one, 2024.
All right, y'all. Winter solstice, December 2021. Just be tuned to it. Just see what happens when your attention, when your awareness is circulating around, oh, this is winter solstice would be the longest night of the year.
Yeah, least amount of daylight, longest night, most spiritually active time. Let that little baby Jesus be born inside you. That's what's happening there, Love that. That's the metaphor for.
Everything's going into the earth, a lot of life, a lot of development being cultivated on the inside, in the inner. Then summer solstice, June 21.
Yeah.
June 21, summer solstice, most sunlight, most radiant moment of the year. Tune into that as well. Just see what it does. I think it's a fun exercise just to bring your awareness to it and see what's different.
Just start there too. You could add more moments throughout the year as you go, but start with those big notes. And the one thing I'll just leave people with, if they are going to experiment with that, is that from a sun angle perspective, the day before and after, these solstices is kind of the same, because it reverses course at that point. So 2 days before is kind of like 2 days after. And so there's this window of time surrounding the event.
This portal.
Yeah, you're like in the chapter. You're in the phase of, you're under the influence of.
Love it.
Much like St. John's wort grows 20 days before and after the summer solstice.
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's an amazing
flowers,
fact.
I should say. It grows for longer than that. But yeah, so it's like, what's flowering inside you right now? And what season?
What's alive?
Yeah, what season are you rolling into? And 20 days before and 20 days after, keep in mind you're flowering, like that St. John's wort. You're flowering the energy of that season. Basically, you're a snapshot of that season. Unless you're just completely disconnected, sitting in an apartment, eating chips, watching TV, riding in elevators, never getting outside, and just like smoking vapes and doing whatever. You know what I mean? But I'm saying if you're actually being a human being, you're having that experience.
Well, even if you are doing that, you're just one footstep away.
Totally.
From getting into the awareness of the sun and the earth.
Yeah, a dull person can become a sharp person quickly. So if that somehow describes you, then you're probably not listening to this show. But if it describes a friend of yours, bring them to the solstice celebration you have.
Yeah, or the river trip.
Yeah.
All right, bro. Love you, man.
You too.
Thank you.
And thank you, Noah.
Noah's the best. We'll see y'all next time. Lots of love, guys. Peace.